Hey y'all, so today I want to talk to you about something that I do that my wife isn't necessarily the biggest fan of. And before you go getting your mind in the gutter, I'm going to head you off at the pass and tell you it's nothing dirty, it's nothing bad. It's simply that I collect things. Now I know what you're thinking, there are a lot of different things out there that I could be collecting. There are baseball cards, there's Matchbox cards, there's stamps, there's spoons, there's just all sorts of different things. But for me, my guilty pleasure of collecting is cameras. I have a collection of about 16 cameras, 12 of which are pre-digital. I wanted to start a mini series where I tell you a little bit more about some of the more interesting cameras in my collection, beginning with the Minolta XG1. So what is the Minolta XG1? It's a 490 gram SLR camera that was produced from 1978 to 1981. And Minolta put this out in response to make a more affordable version of the XG7. It has a lot of the same features as the XG7, but it came in at a much more affordable rate. Today, this camera goes for about $50 to $150 depending on if it still works. But before I get too far ahead of myself, what is an SLR camera? You may be a little more familiar with the DSLR, which is a digital single lens reflex. This was the predecessor. This is just a single lens reflex camera, and that is where this little device in here, the mirror, would flip up when you depress the shutter button, making it to where that the light would imprint the image on the film at the back of the camera. And so again, then you've got the single lens, and you could go in and you could take off the lens, put a different lens on, and I have 6 lenses for this. This is the 50mm f2.0, which I absolutely love. This is an old manual lens where you have to manual focus, you manually set the aperture. And one of the things that I love about SLRs, DSLRs, and mirrorless cameras is certain companies were better at this than others, but it's where you could take old lenses from old camera systems and use them on newer ones. And this particular body takes SR mount lenses. What does that mean exactly? Well, for this camera, it can take the SR mount, which was produced from 1958 to 1966. It can take MC lens mounts, which were produced from 1966 to 1977. It can take MD mounts, which were produced from 1977 all the way up through 2001. And it can use MD X600 lens mounts, which were produced from about 1983 to 1998. And so I saw a graphic where it was something like they bragged that there were like 1,200 lenses that you could use with this camera when it came out. And now let's look at a few of the actual physical attributes of this camera, starting with the upper left. And if you look at the top of the camera, it's very similar to today's mirrorless cameras, the DSLRs, all those, in that you've got plenty of dials, but really no screen. And you do have a very itty bitty screen right here on the side that you can kind of see right there. That very primitive screen tells you how many more photos you have on that roll. Going back to the left side, you have the film rewind switch right here, and what you would do is when you would run out of film, you would take that last picture, you just rewind the film, and then you would pop that out like so. And what that does is that releases the back mechanism, showing you where the film goes. And you would run the first little bit over and you would catch it right there. You would close this up, lock it, and then you would be off to the races. You would advance the film and just be taking to your heart's content. And this is more of your power button. When there are batteries in there that are working, you're able to switch this up to self-timer, so you can use the self-timer feature if you want to be in the photo. You've got obviously off, you've got on, and then you've got battery check. Now, while on the left-hand side, you're only taking care of a couple things outside of power and opening the back, the right-hand side is where all the technical parts of this actually come into play. Starting right here, you have the film advance lever. And what this is it is literally you advancing the film. You would take a picture and then you would advance to the next frame. Take a picture, advance to the next frame. Also on the right-hand side is a dial that has 3 different functions. First up on this right-hand dial is the shutter release, and that's just that button in the very middle of the dial. But on the same dial, you have your shutter priority settings. You have all the way down from bulb up to 1 second, half second, quarter second, 1/8, 1/15, 1/30. I love that 1/60 is in red because that just kind of tells you that this is the sweet spot for this camera. This is probably the optimal setting for what most people need. Then you've got 1/125, 1/250, and this is great because this is where you start getting into that stop action. Actually at 1/320 is true stop action, but at 1/250, you're starting to see less and less of that blur. Then you've got 1/500 and 1/1000. Also on this dial, if you go all the way to this orange A, what you do is then you take this dial and you lift that black ring a little bit and you twist that, and what you do is, though there are some other numbers in there that are inset, and that actually sets the ISO of the film. You used to buy film based off the ISO. This goes down to, I believe, 25. I've never seen film with an ISO that low. The lowest film I've ever seen was 100, I believe, but I have seen the 1600 film that they have here. And so you could choose ISO 1600, 800, 400, 200, 100, 50, or 25. Obviously, the lower levels are the lower sensitivity. That's better for bright days, whereas the 1600, which you max out at, is better for indoor and low light situations. And I hinted at something earlier that I wanted to come back to, that ISO is the sensitivity. Well, the aperture that I mentioned is the diameter of the hole that the lens allows the light to go through. And if you look here, this is at f2.0. Hi, you can see me there. But as I take the aperture down, notice that that hole gets bigger or smaller. This is f22, that is f2. 22, 2. And so what's powering all of this? In our mirrorless cameras and DSLRs, there are some pretty hefty batteries at times. This camera takes not one, but two 5-volt SR44 batteries to power it. So what is so important about this $50 to $150 camera today? Well, it's because this camera belonged to my dad, and don't worry, he is still with us. It's not like it's the last item that I own that he did after some tragic accident or anything. It's just really cool to be able to own essentially one of the first cameras that he purchased and that he was able to take all over the East Coast. This thing went to Clemson football games. It went to NASCAR races at Rockingham and North Wilkesboro Raceway. It went to beach parties. It was probably the first thing that he used on trips when he and my mom were dating and engaged and then married. I'm pretty sure this took some of the first pictures of me and my sister. I guess you could say I have a little bit of a sentimental streak and a little bit of pack rat in me. It comes from my grandparents and my parents. So that is the first installment of this mini series where I'm going to look at a few more of the more interesting cameras in my camera collection. I don't know which one I'm going to pick next. I just know that I have a couple more that have sentimental value. They belonged to my grandfather Carrier. I've got a couple that I bought for myself to learn film on. And then I have a few that were just antique shop finds that I thought looked really cool and was hoping that maybe there was an interesting story behind. If they turn out to be like worth a penny, so be it. They look cool, they look really cool up on the shelf, and I'm excited to learn more about some of these cameras that I have collected. So how about for you? What is that item that you collect that maybe some people don't really see the value in? Or what is a camera that you have that you've held on to that got you into photography, that got you into video? Drop a comment below and let me know what it is that you're collecting or that got you into this crazy business that we all seem to love. But that's it for now. If you like this video, please hit that like button. I do appreciate it. If you don't already, hit subscribe and think about ringing that bell to find out about more videos that I drop, and I will catch you in another video.